My name is Rebecca Barbish Levinson. I am a resident of the District of Columbia, and I have had a consumer complaint against Pepco pending before the DC Public Service Commission since October 2nd, 2024. I do not want to be on camera right now. I don't want to be doing any of this, but for the last 18 months, the DC Public Service Commission and its internal office, known as the Office of the People's Counsel, have been protecting Pepco. And the public needs to know because it's a huge issue right now. Our energy bills are out of control. It's a huge issue in the mayoral race. It's being covered up by not only the Public Service Commission, the Office of the People's Counsel, but also the Department of Energy and Environment, the Office of the Attorney General, the DC Council, and the mayor. They all know what's going on, and they're hiding it from you, and they're hiding it from me even, and that's not fair, and it's not right, and it's not legal. So it's my job to fix this, but they keep saying it's fine, and it's not fine. So on a Thursday, I recorded, I don't know if it was 5 or 6 hours of me talking straight to this camera about all of the evidence that I've uncovered. And after 5 or 6 hours, whatever the end time was, I realized I could continue talking for another 5 or 6 hours because nobody is listening. And as DC residents, we actually do have rights because guess what? The Public Service Commission is bound by the law. And guess what they are required to do? It was actually founded. The whole reason the Public Service Commission exists is to ensure that every public utility doing business within the District of Columbia is required to furnish service and facilities, blah, 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 and that the charge made by any such public utility shall means must, be reasonable, just, and non-discriminatory. That's not happening. What's actually happening is that Mayor Bowser's appointees for the Public Service Commission, particularly Chairman Thompson and Commissioner, I thought it was Traub, but it's like Tribune, and even Commissioner Beverly, none of them were working for us. And even worse, the Office of the People's Counsel. Ms. Madhavu Fry is in charge of that office, and she has been for 20 years. And guess what? She is actively working against us as well. And so I don't know what to do because they've cornered me. And if they've cornered me and I can't get a fair bill after 18 months, neither can you. So I'm just like putting myself out there, and we're going to go through this. And I meant for this to be a shorter video. It's probably going to be longer than I intended, but it's hard because on October 2nd, 2024. October 22nd, 2024, right here on camera, I contacted the DC Public Service Commission, and I referred to file a complaint against Pepco. And so I had already talked to Christina in their office on Monday morning, which was September 30th. And I called PSC as the regulator of Pepco before I even called Pepco, because what I had discovered was that Pepco replaced the usage data on my account when it rendered my August 2024 bill. So it was the first bill after the GPC billing kicked in after Pepco issued the authorization to operate my solar system that it had known was operating for like a month before that, and even told me it was okay. But on July 24th, 2024, the authorization to operate was issued. And so the very next billing cycle, Pepco replaced my data on its portal, which, according to Pepco's own billing statements, is the definitive source for your bill. It went from, you can even see it right here in this, it went from 537 kilowatt hours of excess generation credit to 53.92. Now, when I had called in July 2024, when Pepco issued an estimated bill, they told me it was correct and that I needed to review the portal data to verify the accuracy of my billing. So that's what I did. Well, I didn't actually do it until September because by that point, Pepco had stolen 1,000 kilowatt hours, which is a megawatt hour. That's I can't even tell. That's like well over $100 bill. They'd stolen that from me. And I didn't know anything about any of this at that time. I mean, yes, I am. I'm an attorney. I did patent litigation for multiple years. Have a lot of experience with administrative law proceedings. I'm an electrical and computer engineer. So I am not just an average consumer. I'm a very educated consumer who knows how these things are supposed to work. But I trusted the system, right? So I filed this complaint because under the DC Utility Consumer Bill of Rights, it says that if Pepco will not answer you, you can file a complaint, and Pepco has to legally respond within 14 business days. That was 530 some days ago, and the commission just dismissed my complaint for lack of meeting my burden of proof because Pepco won't tell me what the meter readings actually are. The whole thing is so messed up, but if they're doing this to me, they are most certainly capable of doing it to you. I can't say if they're doing it to you or not, but given the exorbitant electricity bills and all the shutoffs that are happening, people need to be looking into this. And it's just not fair. So, let's look at what my original complaint said. So, Pepco is falsifying our meter readings. Pepco hasn't responded. They shorted us by more than 1,000 kilowatt hours. Falsified data. I put the numbers here. Now here's what's great, okay? So they were supposed to respond within 14 business days by matter of law. It's in the 15 DCMR 300 something, which is the Utility Consumer Bill of Rights. So Pepco had a legal duty to respond within 14 business days. Instead, Pepco, they later produced documents that prove this. It was almost a year later, but Pepco actually covered this stuff up to continue its ability to overbill me by 90% inflation rates on the meter usage. So here, if you just look at this is in July 2024, the first bill, they told me negative 145 was correct. That's my first solar bill that Pepco knew I was generating, sending stuff back to them. Then August was negative 54, and September was negative 50, based on nothing more than the data on Pepco's portal and the meter readings on Pepco's meter. Nothing from my solar system. I filed this complaint saying you shorted me by at least 1,000 kilowatt hours. Well, 2 days after I filed my complaint, Pepco issued revised billing. Look at this. They kept the 54 and the 50 that I complained about, and they reduced the July bill that they had already told me was correct. And they did eventually actually provide the recording of the call that proves that. So that's pretty crazy. But they took it down to negative 12. They still won't explain why that happened. Then on October 22nd, 2024, they provided a written response to the Office of Consumer Services at the DC Public Service Commission. Now, clearly nobody at the commission read that response, because if they had, they would have known that it did not respond to anything raised in my complaints. They actually withheld everything until December, when I finally escalated it to a supervisor, but let's not talk about that now. I kept fighting, and looky here, on November 21st, 2024, Pepco actually corrected my billing to the thing that I had told it about before this October 4th date. So you can see here, 537.62 was what the online portal showed before the bill rendered. After the bill rendered, and I have downloads of both of these data files, it was 53.92. So 54, they said, 2 days later, we're going to keep it at 54 because you're just a customer and we don't care. And then they took it to negative 538. 538, let's see, compared to 537.62 rounded up. Oh, that does equal 538. So basically, I have had the proof. My complaint proved what I was saying since October 2024. The DC Public Service Commission knows this. Pepco knows this. Pepco Holdings attorneys know this. The General Counsel and Bancroft even knows this and approves of what's going on to my account. And the Office of the People's Counsel, who have allegedly been representing me since the commission forced me to file a formal hearing complaint and petition for a formal hearing. I guess, what was this, October 2nd? I don't know what the date calculation is between October 2nd and then the following February. But they actually made me file a formal hearing complaint just to figure out how to verify the accuracy of my Pepco bill, because Pepco has to use a meter, right? They're a utility. I mean, imagine if you went to the gas station and you pumped 10 gallons of gas. Your tank is only 10 gallons of gas, but the display reading says 15. And they charge you for 15. And you're like, but my tank is only 10 gallons. What are you talking about? And they just say, you haven't met your burden of proof. It's fine. And then, let's see another example that would be equivalent. So the odometer on your car, right? Like, I don't know how many of you remember if you're a Fielder's Day off, like you can't put a car in reverse and send the odometer backwards to cover up the fact that you took your dad's Ferrari or whatever car it was out for a joyride, right? So the meter is the meter, but what they're doing is, imagine if your car's display said miles, but really they were using a kilometer conversion. So 10 kilometers is 6.2 miles, so just say 6. So that means you drive 6 miles, but the odometer on your car says you drove 10. These are the types of things that Pepco is able to do because it is exploiting the capabilities of its advanced metering infrastructure that, by the way, DC residents paid for when it was first approved, well before the Exelon merger. So we have smart meters. They're digital smart meters. Digital smart meters did not change anything inherently compared to old meters. And so when this all started, I assumed a meter reading was a meter reading was a meter reading, right? And so back in the day, I've been a homeowner and I've been paying utility bills for, I won't even say how many years, but if they estimate your bill, they can estimate it for a year. Eventually, if you complain, they will do a true up with a meter, right? So they compare and they say, oh, you didn't actually use as much as we estimated, or you did. That doesn't happen anymore. Now Pepco just makes shit up, excuse my language. They make stuff up. And then when you complain, they say, it's your burden of proof to tell us how much electricity you used, when the legal requirements are that they have to bill on the meter, because they're a public utility. I mean, I know it's really profitable for Exelon, for Pepco to fake all this data, but that's not how public utilities work. And no matter how much the DC government wants to bend over backwards to protect Pepco and this crazy inflation of bills to DC residents, I don't care whether they're paying for it or not. I mean, at this point, it's sort of hard not to believe that, DC government is just, well, we'll leave that aside for now. But I've never seen the DC government go so far out of its way to do anything that benefits anyone. But at the end of the day, the law requires them to bill on the meter. So let's get back to my point. And I spent 18 months on this, and it's become like a full-time uncompensated job. Not a full-time uncompensated job. It's been an obsession. I've spent thousands of hours figuring this out. And the public deserves to know the truth, because you are not being protected. And I just saw on the post today that at the mayoral debate, or whatever that was, there was this whole thing about electric bills. And you know what? Anybody who is running for public office right now needs to explain how this is going on, because the system has failed us. And they can blame it on, oh, it's Pepco all they want. But, I mean, yes, Exelon and Pepco Holdings Inc. have a legal duty. They must follow the law no matter what free passes the DC government tries to provide and afford them. But I can tell you right now, I have exhausted every possible opportunity, and nobody in DC government will care. From the DC Public Service Commission, who was supposed to investigate this right here, 14 business days, they withheld the response. Finally, I got Pepco to correct it, as you can see here, but they went back to these numbers that I already told them were correct months earlier. So why didn't Pepco correct it the first time? Nobody will tell me, and everybody must just think, it's fine. It's not fine. Because guess what? I had to spend hundreds and hundreds of hours getting to this point where they finally corrected it. And I have a law degree. I spent the last 20 years in the majority of the last 20 years anyway, in big law firms fighting patent infringement suits against, again, in high-tech cases. Like, this is not how the law works. And so they want me to believe that this isn't a big deal, even though it is. The Office of the People's Counsel, the internal office at PSC that's supposed to be representing ratepayers, has totally sandbagged my case 18 months later. And all I've been asking is, hey, Pepco, why didn't you fix this when I told you about it? And how do I know that what you're telling me is right now is right? I mean, that's funny because even OPC's Director of Litigation, Lawrence Daniels, says that's a basic right. But they don't care because they're all protecting Pepco. And I know that sounds absolutely crazy, but I can prove it all. And so this is why I'm making these videos, because nobody who's supposed to be protecting us is doing their job. And at this point, if I don't keep fighting this fight, this is going to happen forever. And so somebody needs to stop it. And I'm going to put it out there publicly, because guess what? There is a term and condition in the merger agreement between Exelon and Pepco. It's paragraph 105 of the merger. And it says that if Pepco is found to be in material violation of its legal obligations or something like that, that the commission can sever the relationship if it's not in the benefit of the public, of ratepayers, and of Exelon Pepco's shareholders. And so if nobody in the DC government will investigate anything, and they're protecting Pepco actively and Exelon actively for whatever reason, I mean, maybe they're going this far out of their way just because they want to. I mean, at this point, like, incompetence can't explain it. And so they are actively covering this up, which Exelon has a reputation for doing. Their CEO in Illinois from another subsidiary just went to jail for bribing the Illinois legislatures. He was their Speaker of House, Madigan, I believe his name was. And the CEO just went to jail for several years. It was like a 7-year investigation. So what I'm saying is not like some crackpot theory. Like, this is their MO. And so, of course, the DC government could never be corrupted because they're so all honest. But anyway, let's move on to my point, which is I brought this all up. Look at this, October 2nd, 2024. So I've been fighting this ever since. Pepco refused to speak with me as it manipulated my bills. And then I get to the informal hearing in January 2025. And Pepco's response when I asked how can I verify the accuracy of my bills was, trust us. We're Pepco. We've reviewed it for accuracy and deemed it correct. Well, I mean, they also, in their October 22nd, 2024 response to the commission, said that my billing had been corrected based on register readings and was accurate and to trust Pepco. And then they said that in November. And I don't actually have to just trust Pepco because that's not how the law works at all. So I file this consumer complaint. They actually made me file, here, let's go up here. They made me file this consumer complaint, formal hearing complaint. Like, they made me file a petition, request for formal hearing. Like, my complaint was received on October 2nd. My mediation and formal hearing was on January 23rd. I went through all of that. They requested that the matter be assigned to a hearing officer for a formal hearing back in February 2025. Pepco's answer was due within 14 days, and I was supposed to have a formal hearing 45 days later. Pepco got a 14-day extension of time to file its answer, but still, my formal hearing should have been held 45 days after that. But guess what? Last week? No. On March 9th, right after the new rate case overturned by the DC Court of Appeals came out, the hearing officer in my case said that he was dismissing my complaint for failing to meet my burden of proof. And after fighting for 18 months and proving Pepco wrong again and again and again, because it just declares it's right. And then everybody rubber stamps that, and they put it back on the customer to prove Pepco wrong. I proved Pepco wrong so many times that they actually had to eliminate me from the process and tell me that even though I'm the customer and it's my case, I had to rely, this is on September 5th, 2025, 7 months after I filed this complaint. Should have had my formal hearing in May 2025. In September 25, the hearing officer says, "Oh, Ms. Levinson, I don't have the authority to adjudicate anything that was raised in your complaint." Now, let me just tell you what relief I requested. Oh, look at this. I am seeking the following: a method or means to independently verify the accuracy of our Pepco bills, including those issued to date and bills issued in the future. I wrote, you can see here right here, it's a 368-page document. Just because I wanted this one thing, and I don't know, anybody who's ever paid a utility bill, I think you know that you should be able to rely on the meter reading to confirm the accuracy of your bills. Pepco doesn't think so. Pepco Holdings doesn't think so. The DC Public Service Commission doesn't think so. The Office of Consumer Services doesn't think so. The Department of Energy and Environment doesn't think so. Charles Allen, council member for Ward 7, does not think so, and he's the chairman of the Oversight Committee, who just held whatever they call it, the Transportation Committee, who just held oversight hearings. He doesn't think so. The Office of Attorney General doesn't think so. Nobody thinks so, except for me and, I assume, the rest of the DC residents who are being forced to pay bills that Pepco cannot substantiate as a matter of law. And nobody cares. It's fine. I don't think it's fine. I shouldn't have to make a fucking excuse my language. Shouldn't have to make a website. I should beep that out. But I mean, come on, guys. They haven't even given me the right to be heard yet. Charles Allen, when I asked at the February 27th, 2025 hearing, was one of the last public witnesses to testify that day, and I said, how do I give more testimony? They are blocking me, and he promised to ask the Office of People's Counsel and the Public Service Commission about that when they testified on March 5th, but guess what? He did not. And then a few days later, the hearing officer dismissed my case. The Office of People's Counsel didn't care. They abandoned it. and left me on my own. So what am I going to do? I don't think it's fine, so I'm telling you all about it. Okay, so we already went through the DC code that requires these charges to be just and reasonable. And we talked about my complaint. So let's see which one this is. Okay. What else do we have? So I have spent so much time on all of this, right? Here is when I filed my complaint. February 25th, 2025. It gets filed on the e-docket. This is after my petition for the formal hearing was filed. I think I've made it further than any customer has ever against Pepco or anybody at the DC Public Service Commission. So, like, blah, 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 blah. We have here's Pepco's answer. Hearing officer orders a pre-hearing conference. At that point, he orders me, the customer, to file a brief in addition to this, 20-page, let's see. My complaint is, so they approved it. They even sent it to Pepco Holdings General Counsel, or not General Counsel's office, asking for an answer. Nobody helped me with this. I submitted on February 21st, 2025. This was after I had already gone through, October 2nd, 2024, through my informal hearing in January 2025 on something that Pepco was legally obligated to resolve in October 2024. And by the way, everything I said in my original complaint was true. They just, it's fine. Pepco doesn't have to ever tell the truth. So here we go. So February 21st, 2025. Look at this. This is a table of exhibits. I did this all myself because I used to do this type of thing and get paid for it. I mean, I could be getting paid for it now, but I refuse to accept Pepco's unlawful billing. So look at these. They're almost all emails, right? That I sent. Email, some data, and then it covers these billing periods. And so I talk about it's the whole backstory of everything that happened. I have all these footnotes that talk about, because nobody told me what would be relevant or not, so I referred everything back to the violations of the Utility Consumer Bill of Rights, 15 DCMR 300 at sequence. That didn't matter. See, 1,000 kilowatt hours. They end up giving it back. Blah, blah, blah. I mean, it goes on. And it took so much time to distill this very complicated subject matter, and Pepco's intentionally vague responses and weird word choices down to something that was coherent and readable. This is all available on my website if you want to read it, and I'm happy to answer any questions anybody has. And then, here, they changed it from 145 credits to 12, even though they had already told me it was accurate. Then, they were required to respond within 14 business days, but their response didn't acknowledge, let alone address anything. What are you going to do? Then, 2 days after they submitted their response to the commission, they issued another falsified bill. Nobody will explain that either, because it's fine. And then I was allowed to give a list of questions for Pepco, because I was told that if I did not stop asking questions, I would never get to the formal hearing stage and have a formal hearing. So they gave me a final opportunity to list questions, and I did. But they actually never sent those to Pepco, and Pepco has never answered them. No questions answered. Oh, yeah, okay. And then Pepco says that its issue was on its billing errors were based on this issue that it suddenly discovered on November 15th, even though everything was discussed in my complaint. Okay, patently false, yada, yada, yada. And then this was great. After the hearing, which nobody from Pepco would speak to me until then. After that, they said that they wanted to try to resolve things. So I thought they were serious, but then they waited. The hearing was on January 23rd. They knew I was going to go visit my dad in Pittsburgh because he had cancer. I had just gotten diagnosed. And they actually called me for the first time to speak with me about anything about my account while I was driving. They said it was important. They asked me to get off the other line, which I did. And basically they were just trying to confirm that I wasn't at home so they could come and probe the meter while I was going to be visiting my dad in Pittsburgh because he had cancer. These guys are such sleazebag scums. And so they had everything they needed to resolve my complaint on September 30th. They continue to refuse to speak to me. So this is in February 21st, 2025. Since that time, how many times has Pepco spoken with me? Let's see. Well, there was the pre-hearing conference in April 8th, 2025. There was the April 22nd, 2025 technical meeting that the hearing officer ordered the pre-hearing conference because, quote, he did not want to write an order on complicated technical data and wanted us to resolve it on our own. So yeah, and so that's where we were back then. I filed a brief, I explained everything. OPC, faux PC, the Faux People's Council, has been representing me. Actually, they've been telling me since November 24 that they would represent me once I got past this informal hearing stage, but instead they've done nothing but work against me. So it's pretty sleazy on their part. I mean, also against their, legal obligation and what they're supposed to do. Okay, so let's close these things, and then I know that I am probably going to be better off just telling you more about the other stuff. But I've been living this for 18 months. It's Saturday night at 8:03 p.m. and I'm recording a video. So here we go. All right. Okay, so the hearing officer orders me to file a brief. He never really mentions that again. Pepco and OPC actually colluded to try and sandbag me then. I didn't let it happen. So we go. And then finally finally Pepco produces documents, which aren't on the record, but the hearing officer orders me to go to this follow-up conference that was supposed to be recorded. That happened on September 5th. And in between those, on August 29th, 2025, Pepco produced the data from my meter. Now, it's over here on this other side of the screen, and you can see under this status code here, every piece of data says not validated. And I'll just hit the, down arrow on my page down. All of this data is not validated. And this goes back to the time I established service on July 1st, 2023. None of the data is validated. And so this all comes from Itron EE, which is Itron Enterprise Edition. Let's see, not validated, it's still going. Really, it's crazy. Okay, so none of this data is validated. And if you go to Itron is the name of the company who makes the meter data management system. And you look here at Itron's website under reading validation, okay? So what does it say? Reading validation is an essential component of meter data management. The goal is to achieve a high degree of confidence that meter data accurately reflects actual energy use. Okay. Then it talks about data, if it doesn't pass validation, it actually says unreliable data, meaning this not validated data on my account cannot support billing, load research, forecasting, planning, or asset analysis. And you know what this means? This means that none of the billing on my account between July 1st, 2023, and today, what is it? March 21st, 2026. None of it's validated. It's all unreliable data that cannot support billing. But nobody in DC government cares that Pepco is billing me based on this data that cannot support billing, which means they could be billing you based on that data too. But guess what else? That means this load research, forecasting, planning, and asset analysis, which I didn't know any of this before this started, but guess what? Those are the very things that Pepco bases its rate increases on. Its bill stabilization adjustments, all of these little line items, even its taxes on your bills are based on something that the DC government says, oh, it's fine that they've been billing me for 2 years on unreliable data that can't support those things. So how are they approving these rate increases? And all of these things that, I mean, it's in the news. Like, our bills have gone up by 30% plus in the last 2 years. Why? Why? Because Pepco is not billing based on reliable data. How messed up is that? And nobody in our government cares? If they care, they haven't shown it in my case because nobody has stepped up to help. And not only that, they're actively covering it up. So let's look at what this is Pepco Holdings, Inc., Assistant General Counsel Kunle Adeyemo. Now, he has been handling this matter since from the outset. On December 23rd, 2025. Well, actually, I think the email got sent after midnight, so it was actually Christmas Eve. I sent an email to Ann Bancroft, who is the general counsel of Pepco Holdings, and I told her that the Office of the People's Counsel had just submitted a brief on December 12th that did not represent my interests and waived all of my rights because it's a long story that I won't go into here, but the hearing officer back in September 2025 banned me from participating in my own case. Would not let me even appear as co-counsel. I had to decide whether I was relying on the free legal representation guaranteed by the Office of the People's Counsel, or I had to fire them and do all the work myself. I'm a licensed attorney. I'm barred in Virginia, DC, and Maryland. And I clearly have spent a lot of time on this. But at that point, he had already dismissed everything I had to say and wouldn't even listen to me. So I realized there was really no point in continuing to battle at that level because I wrote a brief when he told me Pepco says your bills are right now. So I wrote a brief saying, no, they're not, and here's why, and it's their burden of proof and all that stuff. But instead of making Pepco answer that, everybody worked together because Pepco couldn't provide validated records. And so they cut me out of the case. And then spent basically between August and March 9th, 2026, actively working against me to get Pepco off the hook. I had 10 days to file a petition for review, which was due on Thursday, the 19th. I recorded 6 hours of direct testimony to this camera, just freestyling and explaining what was going on, because clearly if I'm being denied any documents or data from Pepco, which I'm guaranteed by law, in this type of a proceeding, my petition for a formal hearing was granted. So Pepco shall produce these things upon reasonable request, which I made in June, almost 9 months ago. And I'm guaranteed a hearing, right to question witnesses, all of this stuff. And now they're trying to dismiss my case just because Pepco doesn't have a defense. And that means that they're giving Pepco a free pass to bill you whatever you want. So let's look at what happened. This is a transcript that the Office of the People's Counsel provided me from an October 5th, 2025 meeting with Pepco. I was not allowed to attend this meeting because this was after I was excluded from the case, and they knew I would ask the hard questions, so they had to cut me out. And so you can see Stephen Marincek, he's an attorney at the Office of the People's Counsel, the faux People's Counsel. or faux PC. He has been my attorney since January 2025, and if anybody actually asked him on the record, I guarantee you he would not be able to identify a single thing that was done to advance my case. He believed in his bosses. I don't know if he still does or not, but he kept telling me that there wasn't some bigger thing going on here. But, after 18 months and Pepco still can't produce validated data to support its billing, I think it's an issue. But, I'll leave that up to everybody else to decide. But you can see here. So Stephen asks, specifically, this is to Kunle Adeyemo, who is the Assistant General Counsel for Pepco Holdings. You see that under this blue barcode here, I guess it's bluish green, it says not validated. And they want an answer, right? What does this mean? Okay. And so here is the Assistant General Counsel from Pepco Holdings. He says, I think obviously the word not validated means something more to you all than it does to us. It's just a process designation. This means that this is in the Itron system straight from the meter until we actually use it for billing, and that's what you're billed, we wouldn't consider it to be validated. It's not an indication of whether or not the data itself is actually what is coming from the meter. It's just a status that we use internally for what's on the Itron. Now, I know there are going to be engineers out there listening to this, and so not to go into too many technical details, but first of all, you have to bill based on a meter reading and what's transmitted through the advanced metering infrastructure, through the telemetry, and all this stuff is not necessarily the thing that came from the meter. But before it even goes into this Itron EE database, it goes to a head-end system called Utility IQ. Utility IQ is supposed to record the meter data that is received directly from the meter, and then it translates it into this meter reading data in Itron Enterprise Edition, and that is exactly where the validation, estimation, and editing occurs to guarantee that your bill is accurate. As we talked about a minute ago, reading validation. And so this whole website talks about this. I don't have it pulled up now, but I have so many examples of other jurisdictions requiring this, because that's literally the only thing that makes sure that Pepco is not manipulating its meter readings, because there are so many things that they can take advantage of. I have an Aclara, I want to say I210 plus C. I know the model and I just forgot it, but it's the Aclara 210 plus C meter. That's what is deployed for most residential customers in DC. There might be one other one. And you can program that meter to have all sorts of different displayed readings on the display. It does not mean that that is the actual energy use measured by your meter. And in fact, during my case, Pepco's PHI's Assistant General Counsel, Kunle Adeyemo, has repeatedly said the meter reading displayed on my meter is not the source of billing. He has said that it is not the portal data. It's not the source of billing. He says it is the internal data received from the meter that is validated. He said it again in his January 5th, 2026 reply to OPC's brief. But at the same time, all of the data on my account is not validated. So somebody needs to explain what is happening here, and they won't. And they just say, it's fine, and they want me to go away. So they keep making it harder and harder and harder, but I'm not going anywhere because they're cheating, and I don't like cheaters, and I refuse to pay a bill like this. And I'm seeing how it's affecting my neighbors and people in DC. Shutoffs or disconnects were 120% up in December. If Pepco cannot validate the meter readings it is using to bill customers, how can it be shutting them off and disconnecting service? Not to mention the fact that the DC Court of Appeals just overturned Pepco's last rate increase. It was rubber stamped by the commission. They vacated that rate increase. That means those charges are null and void. Every bill that Pepco has issued since January 1st, 2025 has been based on an unlawful rate, and Pepco wants to force through an expedited hearing without public notice, which is required by law. And Pepco doesn't want to give you a refund because it says it will be confusing to customers if it refunds its illegal vacated rates. And that it should be permitted to continue billing us based on rates that the DC Court of Appeals has specifically said are vacated. They're null and void. There's no basis for them. I will be giving another, man, this video is way longer than I expected it to be. Shit, it's 46 minutes. But there's just so much here to unpack. I mean, the new bill, the new rate stuff that's going on in formal case 1176, they are all doing this stuff so low-key without sufficient notice to the public, in many cases, which is illegal and unlawful, so that we can't participate. Despite the fact that this is making headline news in Washington, D.C. and around the country. But it's fine. Because guess what? Exelon's profits are more important to the D.C. government than our right to, where is it? Oh, I shut it. What is it? The just, accurate, and whatever else, Phil. Okay. I mean, so here is Mr. Adriano. He says this is internally used status on Itron. My attorney from OPC says it has nothing to do with if it's an actual reading or not. Mr. Adeyamo says no. Then he says this status column, the status column, will never change for Itron readings. It will always say not validated, because when it goes to billing and they download the same exact data and they use it for billing, it's in their own system, and that's validated data because it's now being used for billing. But in Itron, it will never change the status. Now, that's extra fascinating because in my case, when I complained, they actually turned off the interval data and used the register data. But guess what? None of that was validated either way. And so this is straight up billing fraud. I don't know why the Office of the People's Counsel can ignore something so obvious and so unsupported by fact and law. I would ask that, there have to be people out there who know that what I'm saying is correct, because this is just insane. They just assume it's fine, because what is one resident of the District of Columbia going to do against, the multi-billion-dollar annual profiteering Exelon that serves 11 million customers? I am just one customer in Pepco's universe of, 919,000 customers, and that includes Maryland. They don't think I can do anything about it. They think they're going to silence me. They're wrong. And I have a feeling that once you all know what's really going on, they're not going to stop us. They can't stop us. Because guess what? The DC Public Service Commission has a legal obligation to enforce Pepco's legal obligations. They're like the watchdog, right? And we don't get a voice because we cannot sue Pepco over these billing issues. We have to go through the DC Public Service Commission. So we're the third party beneficiary. And guess what? Pepco, PHI, and Exelon know that. They know they're not absolved of their legal obligations, no matter what. It doesn't matter if, if the entire DC government imploded tonight, Pepco would have a legal obligation to follow the law. They're a public utility. But they just know that nobody in DC government is going to make them follow the law. So every decision they make is based on how much profits it will lead to for um, for Exelon. And in 2024, right before Pepco's rate increase went into effect, well, I guess they approved it in November. The 10K for Exelon for 2024 shows that Pepco had a 27% increase in profits in 2024. They were up 84 million over the previous year. And now they're claiming financial hardship because they have a rollback on a $123 million rate increase that even Commissioner Beverly, in his dissent, noted was based on nothing more than, quote, because Pepco said so. And there wasn't even sufficient public notice as required by law to push it through. I mean, it's criminal. And it's what's going on. And man, I wish I could do 5-minute videos on all of this. And at some point I will be able to. But people need to know. And I'm not going to stop. And it's not fun. Anyway, peace out, y'all. It is 8:22 p.m. on a Saturday night. And guess what? I'm going to be probably working until 3 a.m. or 4 a.m. again on this again because that's all I do. I mean, literally, I had 3,000 plus hours in, like, as of last fall. Now I have had to learn WordPress. What is this? OBS. I have something called Whisper that converts the text to the transcripts. I mean, I have gone so above and beyond. And nobody can tell me how to verify the meter reading on my Pepco bills. The usage data. I mean, it's that simple. It boils down to what is the meter reading and is Pepco billing on it? And the entire system just says, it's fine. Just pay Pepco whatever they say. And I'm guessing you guys aren't going to think that's fine either. So anyway, hope everybody has a wonderful night. Hopefully I'll get some sleep. And feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions, concerns. I am transparent, open, honest. I can prove everything I'm saying, and anything that is based on speculation, I caveat. If I forget to do so, it is totally an inadvertent error. I'm a good guy. I'm a good guy. Good girl. Whatever it is. Like, I'm telling the truth and they're lying. So, protect yourselves because nobody else is going to. Only you can prevent Pepco's billing fraud. Have a good night.